with pain, your spirit soars and sings. Though sorrow clouds your day, it's sunny skies tomorrow brings. And home, take my hand, let's be friends forever. And home, take my hand, alone no more, not ever. Imagine dreams are real, and soon you'll start to feel there's magic all around. And home, take my hand, love is all around.
Marilla had kept her promise. She'd invited Mr. Allen, the new minister, and his wife to tea. This very important event was to take place the following Wednesday. On the Monday and Tuesday, Marilla and Anne worked very hard in the kitchen, preparing for the occasion. Anne was proud to be part of the preparations because she wanted to make a good impression, particularly on Mrs. Allen. Mrs. Allen was Anne's latest idol. Since being introduced to her, Anne had thought less of Lady Cordelia Fitzgerald, and her image was fading. Matthew was not aware of the preparations, and Marilla and Anne had made a solemn promise to one another not to tell him. Matthew wasn't very fond of ministers, so it would be better to tell him about the planned tea party only shortly before the guests were to arrive.
Diana, if Matthew knew the minister had a wife, I think he would not only leave Green Gables in a big hurry, but he'd leave Carmody altogether. The past 2 days, Marilla and I have worked harder than during the harvest time. But it's not every day that we can have the minister and his wife over for tea. Let me see. We've made chicken breast meatloaf, cold cuts of tongue, and 2 kinds of jelly, red and yellow. Lemon curd with cream, a cherry cake, and 3 different kinds of small cakes. And of course there's a fruit cake, some biscuits, and Marilla's famous delicious plum preserve, and a marble cake. Marilla also baked some muffins. And I'm still going to make a layered cake.
12 different things?
Yes, but you know, when I think of the layered cake I promised to bake, I get cold shivers down my spine. Oh, Diana, what shall I do if the cake isn't a success? I had a strange dream last night. A very ugly dwarf with a long white beard was chasing me. On his head was a giant layered cake. I promise you it will be a success!
Oh, you and your dreams, Anne.
Isn't it terrible?
No, why would the cake not be a success this time?
Because I have a strange feeling. I don't know why.
But you baked a cake not so long ago and you took it along when we went to Idlewild. And we both thought it was very tasty.
Diana, you're a wonderful friend. What would I do without you? You always say such nice things. But cakes are so unpredictable. You can never tell if they will be a success or not, especially when you bake them for a special occasion. Oh, I hope my wishing stick will bring me good luck. I trust the ingredients and that I will make the best cake ever. Look, a rainbow reflection in the water. Do you think it's a good sign, Diana?
Yes, it must be.
Do you know what I think? I think a beautiful dryad will come and fetch the rainbow reflection at the hour of midnight, and she will wear it as a scarf.
Oh, nonsense. There are no such things as dryads. Everyone knows that.
Maybe there aren't, but dryads can still exist in my dreams. Every night before I go to bed, I look at our birch forest through my window. And then I imagine I can see a dryad sitting on one of the rocks, combing her beautiful long hair in the moonlight. Sometimes I come to the pond early the next morning to see if I can find her footprints. The misty air softens the ground. One should be able to see them.
And you never find them, of course.
Diana, it really is such a shame that you don't believe in dryads.
All right, then. If it's so important to you, Anne, I will believe in them.
Why did you get up so early this morning, Anne?
Because it's such an important day. Mr. and Mrs. Allen are coming to tea, and I thought I could perhaps help you.
There's no hurry. They'll only be here this afternoon. We have the whole day ahead of us. Do you have a cold?
Yes, today of all days, Marilla.
I'm not surprised you were splashing around in the water until after sunset.
But it's a catastrophe. I must make my very important cake today.
Oh, don't be silly. No cake in the world can be important. There isn't anything else to do. Go back to bed and rest for a while.
No, I could never do that.
Although she tried not to think about it and even managed not to sneeze that often, one thing was certain. Anne did have a cold.
Matthew, we have guests this afternoon. I've invited the new minister and his wife over to tea, and I'd like you to be here and be polite to them. And another thing, don't forget to comb your hair and wear your Sunday suit.
No, I can't have tea with you. I was planning to work in the cucumber field today.
Oh, Matthew, please have tea with us.
I'm sorry, Matthew, can't get away with it this time. You're the head of the household.
Well, then, apologize to the guests for me. I'm sorry. I don't have time, not for a tea party anyway.
Matthew, we've been preparing for 2 whole days. There are so many delicious things to eat. And they are both very nice people, really.
No. No, I don't belong at tea parties. Tell them I'm in bed because I have a cold and I don't want them to catch it.
But what are we going to do? Without Matthew, our tea party could never be perfect. I'll keep on asking him until he says yes.
It's no use. Whenever Matthew hears the word minister, he runs away. Why don't you clear the table and start baking the cake? Otherwise you won't finish in time.
Yes. I don't understand why Marilla wants me to wear this mask. I'm not a nurse. They won't catch cold from me. How am I supposed to taste anything with my mouth covered like this? I know she believes in doing everything right, but sometimes she goes too far. Nobody ever wore a mask in the orphanage when somebody had a cold.
Managing?
Marilla, could I take this mask off? I can't smell anything.
All done?
Uh-huh. There. Everything went well, and I didn't forget any of the ingredients. Not this time. Now I can only hope that the cake rises well. If there was anything wrong with the baking powder I used, then I can forget about my reputation as a good pupil. These days you can't trust anything anymore. You must always keep in mind that the baking powder could be stale. Well, that's what Mrs. Lindy says. And Mrs. Lindy says that the government should do something about it.
Well, I think you should let the government worry about the baking powder problem. How are you feeling now?
Oh, Marilla, my cold has completely disappeared. But what do we do if Mrs. Lindy is right? What if there is anything wrong with the baking powder?
The poor guests. They'll have to make do with the scraps I've prepared for them.
But Anne's fears were unfounded. When the cake came out of the oven, it looked just as a cake should. Anne was delighted. She cut the cake into layers, and even that went smoothly. Then she covered the layers with strawberry jam. While she was spreading the cake with cream and decorating it as attractively as she could, Anne tried to imagine what Mrs. Allen's reaction would be when she tasted it.
That was really very nice. Please, may I have another slice of your cake?
Oh, but of course you may.
I can't wait to taste it. I would also like a piece, Anne.
Come and see the cake, Marilla.
No, I can't. Bring it here.
Look, it's all done, Marilla.
Good. Put it on the shelf with the others.
The silver. And our best cups, you've taken them out and it's not even Sunday.
No, don't touch, Anne. I've just cleaned the silver and I don't want to do it again.
I have an idea. Let's decorate the table with flowers and leaves. What do you think?
What on earth should we do that for? They do things like that in the city to hide the fact that they can't cook. The quality of the food is important, not the decorations on the table.
Diana's mother decorated the table when the Allens went to have tea with the Barrys, and Diana says the minister had complimented her mother.
Oh.
He said it wasn't just a feast for the stomach, but also a feast for the eye.
All right, just a few flowers.
Thank
But
you.
I don't want the whole table full of them. Leave some space for the plates and cups.
Of course. There'll be more than enough space for them.
Put away all the ingredients before you go, Anne.
That's strange. I could spell absolutely nothing.
Anne was determined to persuade Matthew to have tea with her and Marilla and their guests that afternoon. She really wanted to make a good impression on the Allens. And somehow she had the feeling that it wouldn't be possible without Matthew. Long before Mr. and Mrs. Allen were due to arrive at Green Gables, Anne stood waiting on the porch and stared them closer. Well, that was how she put it when she wanted something with all her heart.
The guests are almost here, Matthew. Oh, you look very smart. I almost didn't recognize you. You look just as you did the day you fetched me from the station.
I couldn't have been wearing this shirt. The collar's choking me. Oh, I can never tie these things.
Let me see if I can do it for you. Marilla will be so surprised. She thinks you're in bed pretending to have a cold. I've brushed your jacket.
Thank you, Anne. You're very kind. Oh, why did you talk me into this?
Anne, where are you? They're here.
Quick, we must hurry, Matthew.
You go ahead. I'll be there in a while.
Matthew?
Anne!
Don't disappoint me.
Marilla and Anne waited outside in front of the house to welcome their guests. They exchanged pleasantries as hosts and guests normally do. The moment she saw Mrs. Allen, Anne completely forgot about Matthew. Mrs. Allen was touched by the fact that Anne was so enthusiastic.
I'm afraid my brother isn't feeling very well. He's in bed with the flu.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Please come inside. Oh, Matthew Cuthbert.
Matthew?
Welcome to Green Gables.
This is my brother, Matthew.
Good day, Mr. Cuthbert. We're the Allens. And may I wish you a speedy recovery.
Oh, yes, I'm feeling much better. I didn't feel well earlier, but I'm fine now, thank you.
Let's go inside where it's more comfortable. Oh, how lovely.
Just smell the flowers. The table really looks wonderful, Miss Cuthbert. We certainly didn't expect you to go to all this trouble.
Anne did it all on her own.
But you're a very creative girl, Anne Shirley.
Do you really like it that much, Mrs. Allen?
It's beautiful.
Anne was so happy she could hardly breathe. Everything was exactly as she had imagined it would be. Mrs. Allen was a very pretty lady, and Anne couldn't take her eyes off her. And Matthew was having a friendly conversation with the minister. He didn't say a word to Mrs. Allen, but that was no more than anyone could have expected. The guests complimented Marilla on her baking. It certainly was delicious. At last the cake Anne had baked was brought to the table.
Would you like to try some of this?
Thank you, but I've already had so much to eat I don't think I could possibly finish another piece.
Of course I understand, but it really is such a pity. Anne baked this cake all on her own. She didn't want me to help her with anything.
Well, in that case, I will have a piece.
There.
Thank you. Oh, it looks enticing. Splendid.
Anne Shirley?
Yes?
Anne, what in heaven's name did you put in this cake, child?
Only what the recipe said I had to put in. Why? Is anything wrong?
Mrs. Allen, please don't eat any more of the cake. Anne, what did you put in this cake?
Only vanilla. Oh, Marilla, it must have been the baking powder. I knew there was something wrong with it.
There was nothing wrong with the baking powder. Go to the kitchen and bring me the bottle of vanilla you used.
It was vanilla.
Bring it here, let me see. Oh, my goodness. Oh, Anne, that's what's happened. Instead of flavouring the cake with vanilla, you added cough mixture to it.
No.
Did you find this bottle on the medicine shelf?
Yes.
I accidentally dropped our bottle of cough mixture a while ago, and it broke. I could only save a little bit of the cough mixture, and I poured it into the empty vanilla bottle. This is really my fault. I should have warned Anne. Couldn't you smell that it was cough mixture? I don't understand it.
No, I couldn't smell what it was. Because I had to wear that silly mask on my face, that's why!
Anne, come back here.
Well,
Oh.
Oh, Marilla, I will never ever forgive myself. I'll go away from here. I can't stay here with you any longer. There's nothing else I can do. How could I ever show my face in the streets of Avonlea again? Diana will ask me about the cake and how it tasted. I'll have to tell her the truth. Because I can never lie to her. Everyone will point at me and laugh so much they'll have to hold their stomachs, and then they'll say, "Look, there goes the girl who baked a cake for the minister and his wife and flavoured it with cough mixture instead of vanilla." Oh, Marilla, if you feel just a little bit sorry for me, you wouldn't even think of telling me to go downstairs and do the dishes. I really don't think I'd be able to. I promise I'll do it as soon as the minister and his wife have left. One thing is certain, Marilla, I know I'll never be able to face poor Mrs. Allen again. She probably thinks I did it on purpose and that I wanted to poison her. Mrs. Lindy says someone once told her a story about an orphan girl who tried to poison her foster parents. But cough mixture isn't poisonous. Please tell Mrs. Allen that it isn't poisonous, Marilla.
I think you should rather dry your tears and tell Mrs. Allen yourself.
I didn't know it was you.
Mm-hmm. And Shirley, there really is no reason to cry. Come now, my child, it was just a little mistake. It could have happened to anyone, even to me.
Oh, no. Nobody else ever makes mistakes of that kind, only me. Mrs. Allen, all I wanted to do was bake a perfect cake. I wanted to surprise you.
Yes, I know you only meant well. And I appreciate the fact that you tried to do it. To me, the thought is much more important than the silly cake. So please stop crying. Come along. Quickly, dry your tears. I'd like you to come downstairs with me. I would really like to see your lovely flower garden. Miss Cuthbert tells me you have your own little garden and the flowers are very pretty. I think gardens are wonderful. I also had my own garden when I was a little girl.
Mrs. Allen eventually managed to persuade Anne to go back to the dining room with her. To Marilla's astonishment, Anne acted as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. Anne showed Mrs. Allen the garden and was her old cheerful self again. She picked some of the prettiest flowers and gave them to Mrs. Allen to take home with her. Neither of them mentioned the cake again, and they both knew they would never talk about it in the future either. Anne knew Mrs. Allen was someone she could trust. Later, in the kitchen, when she was helping Marilla with the dishes, Anne gave a deep sigh and said,
Oh, Marilla, isn't it wonderful to think that tomorrow is a brand new day and that we can all start it without having made any mistakes?
And how does it end? You make at least one mistake every day. Sometimes I think you attract mistakes like a magnet.
Yes, I know. But haven't you noticed something else, Marilla? Something very encouraging.
Nothing I can think of.
Well, I never make any mistake more than once.
Oh, yes. I don't know if it's such a good thing to keep thinking of new mistakes to make.
But, Marilla, just think of it this way. One day there will be no more mistakes to make. I will have made them all. Such a wonderful thought, isn't it?
It will also be wonderful if you just take that cake you baked out to the pigs and feed it to them. There's nothing else we can do with it.
Yes, Marilla. I'll tell the pigs I'm sorry it tastes so bad.
When Anne said goodnight to the moon that night, she was feeling very happy. She would never again bake a cake and flavor it with cough mixture. It was a reassuring thought. She thought of Mrs. Allen and the fact that she'd see her soon at Sunday school. That, too, was a reassuring thought. When Anne got home from school one day, there was a big surprise waiting for her. Mrs. Allen wanted to show her appreciation for a lovely afternoon at Green Gables by inviting Anne to tea, but more about that later.
Soft whispers on the breeze, the wood nymphs in the trees are calling out your name. They offer you their gifts, sweet fragrance fills the air. The magic of a moonlit night